All right, how's everybody doing? It is the Cheech and the Manny Music Podcast, and we have a great show for you today. We have a special guest, Mr. Joe Silkman, and this whole show is going to be about Led Zeppelin, the prehistoric Led Zeppelin up to Led Zeppelin III, and who knows where it's going to go. Many stories. Me and Joe had a what do you call it? A pre-game,
Pre-show.
pre-show Led Zeppelin talk, which we were pre-gaming on Led Zeppelin, and a lot of good stuff. So how's it going, Manny?
Oh man, life is good, Cheech and Joe. I'm so glad you're on the podcast. This is so exciting to prepare for this. I listened to the first three Zeppelin records, and I always forget how much of masterpieces they each are. So, I gotta kind of filter out Rush a little bit and not kind of break out the lead.
What? What's wrong with you?
Well, only because I keep
only-
forgetting, dude. Led Zeppelin 2, man. I'm gonna ask you some questions on it.
Oh yeah, that's one of my favorites. So, all right,
Rich.
so Joe, how's it going? How's everything?
Everything is great. Loving it.
That's
Having a
good.
time. Give my best
So
to
happy.
everyone at the temple.
Definitely. So glad you're living happy and don't have to ever come back to the temple. You're a very lucky man.
I think Cheech. I mean, it's so sad because I think
We
Cheech.
miss you. We miss you
Oh,
so much.
Yeah. No, Cheech, I don't think things are getting any better, right, Cheech?
No.
No. And someone told me, a fellow temple worker, that they're introducing AI to like how they make schedules, so it's gonna mess with people's schedules. Even, already people watch. Yeah, it's bad. It's like you guys have seen Terminator.
Yeah.
Sure.
Sort of like they introduced some Skynet program.
Pretty soon there'll be robots doing our jobs. Anyway. So let's have some fun.
Do it.
And so I have my little outline. Joe knows how the show works, and just jump in at any time. I'm gonna probably talk like me and Joe were talking earlier. I'm just gonna give some basic facts. We all know it, but there might be a viewer out there who doesn't know anything about Led Zeppelin. So this might be like we might be just turning somebody on to Led Zeppelin. Quick shout out to Powders Field. Love you guys. Any shout outs, Manny?
No, just thank you for all Cheech, thank you, Joe, thank you for coming on, and thank you for our fans and viewers.
Almost up to 2,000 views. It's really growing. Okay, so Led Zeppelin. I gotta do it this way. Okay, Led Zeppelin started in 1968 and they ended in 1980. Members: Jimmy Page, Robert Plant, John Paul Jones, John Henry Bonham. They came from the Yardbirds, Jimmy Page, and the Band of Joy. And me and Joe were just talking about the Band of Joy. For those of you who don't know that was Robert Plant and John Bonham's band. And I knew a guy, I was telling Joe, named Michael, who's from England, and he saw them at his high school. He knew Robert Plant in high school. Imagine seeing Plant in high school, which is crazy. Led Zeppelin, in my opinion, they blended so many styles of music, and you could chime in, Joe, at any time. Blues, rock, folk, metal, bluegrass at times, Indian music. Anything I missed, Joe, you think?
No, you got it.
And that?
Very diverse. Every album sounded different.
It did. It totally did. So some of the things that I like about Led Zeppelin, my favorite thing is, Plant and Page's like writing style. They're Lennon and McCartney together kind of mentality. How they wrote, that's one of my favorite things. John Paul Jones might be my favorite thing about Led Zeppelin. I don't know. I think underrated keyboard player. What do you how do you feel about that compared to the other greats during that era?
Yes, he's underrated. He was the musical arranger of the band.
Yeah, I think he could have done more. I think with keyboards in Led Zeppelin. You think is that a good point? Or
if you talk to John Paul Jones, he'll say he did enough. He was always different instruments. he had the 3-neck guitar, on
Oh
stage.
yeah, but he's
Um,
he's known more as a bass player, as one of the greatest bass players, but not so much known as a keyboard player. Like
right.
they know he's a great keyboard player, but more known as a bass player.
Yeah. Well, as a keyboard player, you got to remember, even on Zeppelin albums, he didn't play keyboards uh, all the time. They actually used Stu from the Rolling Stones for a couple of their songs.
Really?
Rock and Roll, yeah, it was one of them. So even
Oh,
on Zeppelin tunes, they had Stu from the
that's
Stones.
amazing. That's
Wrote it.
amazing.
That's
Yeah.
pretty. Yeah, it's pretty
That
amazing.
that's why we got Joe on the show. I didn't know
That's
that.
why.
The end of rock and roll, that like down home kind of chugging on the piano keys. You can
Yeah.
hear it. In my opinion, um, the greatest rock drummer of all time.
One of them, yeah, John Bonham.
Next to, we won't bring his name up next to our favorite rock drummer, but when you think about John Bonham's power,
Yeah.
nobody had power like that in 1968.
Yeah.
Like he just
No.
bashed those drums and his groove. He just had so much groove and power, and he was playing like a 4-piece on that early stuff. When you see that, what is it, like live in, what are they in, like Holland, on that first album, when you just like, it's a black and white concert, and he's just killing it on a 4-piece. And the audience is very proper, just like clapping at the end of the song.
Was that the TV show? The
Yeah,
TV. They did very few of them, but I remember that the audience was behaved, and yeah.
And I think Page is playing a Strat. He was kind of dabbling, like before he went to the Les Paul Jr. He was playing a Stratocaster.
Yeah, that was Yardbird's guitar.
Yeah, yeah.
I will say, and with John Bonham, just listening to his drumming style compared to Neil Peart,
yeah.
it's crazy how much character he has. Like
Oh yeah.
he's not the most intricate drummer, but just that I think he's the master of the rock drum 4/4.
Oh yeah. His fills are unique too. Nobody fills like John Bonham, and
No.
they might have been one of the first drummers to put effects on the drums, like in Kashmir. I think it has like a flanger on it when he's doing those fills. So like they were doing unique kind of things in the studio, and we'll talk about, of course, Jimmy in the studio. So,
well, one thing on Bonham, he was also
sure.
known as having the fastest foot in the business. With
Oh,
the bass.
how could we forget that? How could we?
Yeah,
forget
other drummers were kind of really amazed that they were, it's like he did so much with, he never needed to.
And Good Times Bad Times is the best example of that. Yeah, that's a great point. He would do stuff with his foot in the floor tom. Edit, that kind of thing. Unbelievable. So he innovated that. So Led Zeppelin. This is an interesting fun fact. Do you know? Let's see how good you are, Joe. Do you know where their first? And you have a great story about this. What year the first rehearsal was, and do you know what street it was on in London?
Oh, well, their first rehearsal was in February 1968, I think, and it was on Gerrard Street.
Oh my God, you nailed it!
Nice.
Wow. Yeah.
Wow. And you have a funny story about that.
Well, it was funny that they had the rehearsal and it was just magical. They knew the moment they went into Train Kept It Rolling.
Yeah.
That they did something very special. It's just at the end of the rehearsal, it was. Obviously Jimmy had money. He was kind of doing very well for himself in the studio, but he had the nerve to ask the two young guys, Bonham and Plant, for money to pay for the food that they were given, the food and drink, while they were doing the rehearsal. And these guys they were 19 years old. They didn't have 2 nickels to rub together. They didn't have enough money for cigarettes or gas. And that's why Jimmy's nickname early on was Lead Wallet.
Yeah. I remember that. Oh my God, that's fun. I can't believe you got Gerrard Street. Let's see if you know this one. Their first gig, what year and where was it? Before the Scandinavian tour. I could be wrong, but this is what I found.
Well, I think the first gig was it was in Denmark. It's September 7th, 1968.
The information I got was Surrey University in England, 1968, and they were billed as the new Yardbirds. Might have been a one-off. I don't know if you ever.
I didn't know that
Yeah,
because I
that's
really thought that the whole thing was that Peter Grant and Jimmy Page needed a band to get together to fulfill these Scandinavian date requirements. You know, the commitments
yeah.
they had made.
Yeah,
Uh,
that was something I had found. I thought maybe you may have known that or not known that. I did not know that. I knew about the Scandinavian. And is
yeah,
there any recordings of that? You have any bootlegs of that, or have you ever seen or video
no,
footage?
no,
So that's
just
never been released.
photos. I've just seen some photos.
So that's in the vault somewhere, right? Like the Scandinavian tour. Jimmy Page must have that somewhere.
Uh, if he does, I would think he would have released it by now.
Yeah, somebody had a record. Maybe somebody in Norway has it locked in a
Yeah.
closet.
I was gonna say it's like a bootleg in Norway or something,
Yeah. Okay, so the first Led Zeppelin album, in my opinion, I think it's one of the best debut albums of all time. Recorded in 1968, Olympic Studio, London.
This
And
one.
this is interesting.
Ooh,
Oh,
let's
there you
clear it
go.
up.
Joe is ready with the props and everything.
Dude, and every song in this album is perfect.
Magical, magic.
It is
Yeah.
truly magic, and
Oh
I
my
think
god.
for our viewers, dude, I love it.
You know
And
how
for our
many times I looked at the back of that album as a kid? Like you just brought me back to like fifth grade. Well, like your time is gonna come is playing
wait,
on the turntable.
wait. So let me ask Joe a question. So for me, it's been a long time since I've listened to Led Zeppelin one. So you already know, I usually gravitate towards prog rock, and I always forget the hard rock side of things. So I listened to Led Zeppelin one, and recently on the way to work, like 5 times, and I keep forgetting how magic of a record it is, and how strong and insane of a debut it is. So when you first heard it, Joe, like what was your reactions? Led Zeppelin one.
Oh, the first time I heard it, I became a fan. I'd never heard anything like this.
Now, was that your first like Zeppelin experience, or did you buy four first and then work your way back
I,
forwards?
I had a third cousin who was 5 years older than me, and I remember talking to her because older kids always had the cool records back then.
Of course.
Uh, I said, I heard this song. Explained it to her, and I said, "Who is the man with the screaming voice?" And she knew right away. Oh, that must be Led Zeppelin.
Oh
And
wow.
well, if I wanted to get an album, which one should I get first? And
Yeah.
actually, Led Zeppelin 4. But after
Right.
hearing Led Zeppelin 4, I went back. I got 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and then
That-
actually, Houses of the Holy had just come out also, so I got that. So I was up to date.
Yeah. Yeah. That happens a lot. Sometimes you find a band and you don't. If you weren't around when it came out in 1970, 1968, you go backwards. I did that with Rush. I think I bought like 2112 first and then went back to the first album. So that's something that happens a lot. You probably done that, Manny, right? A lot.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
And it's kind of like you're learning, but then the timeline's off, but then you figure it out somehow,
Yeah.
or somebody tells you. Uh, so this is an interesting fact that me and Joe were talking about. Jimmy Page, as John Paul Jones doesn't get enough credit as being one of the greatest keyboard players. Jimmy Page, I don't think gets enough credit as being one of the best rock and roll producers. He produced
No, yeah,
every
you did.
album.
Yeah.
So he produced Led Zeppelin 1, and what I love about it is it has a low budget sound. It's not overly produced like a lot of those albums that came out during that era, like Sabbath's first album, or even early Deep Purple and stuff. But it has a magic to it. It had modest success, reaching number 10 in the UK. I'm sorry. Reaching number 10 in the US and modest success in the UK. Have you heard that before?
Yeah, I always heard that they broke in the United States first, and that
Yeah.
they had trouble at home.
Yeah.
So that's why they toured America like 3 times in 1969. They kept coming back
Yeah, yeah.
because
That's
the word of mouth. They were a word of mouth band.
mm-hmm.
It just, of course, this is before MTV. This is before social media. Uh, even magazines weren't really featuring them at all. So they were very mysterious. So their popularity just spread word of mouth.
Yeah, yeah. And that's it. That's a lot with a lot of bands during that era. Sabbath as well. Um,
A lot of
so
hard work.
oh yeah, those bands toured. It wasn't like
Mm-hmm.
they were just going on Instagram and getting a million followers or being influencers. Those people actually worked. You had to work back then, doing like
Mm-hmm.
200 dates. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, some bands were like two. I think Led Zeppelin. My brother-in-law Rob had a book, and from like 1968 to like 1974, they toured every single night. Like we would look at our birthdays and be like, where were they on April 22nd, the night I was born, 1970? Oh, in Milwaukee. You know what I mean? Like, where were they on my sister's birthday, June 26th? Oh, they were in London. So like they were not, and that's why you said Plant's voice went at one point, Joe. Right? Remember we had this conversation.
Uh, his voice used to back up a lot on tour. He used to catch a lot of cold.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was catch the flu. You
Yeah.
know, you have the flu and you feel like you're green. You feel like you're gonna.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it's his instrument.
Yeah, but
So,
he pulled it off. Um, so to talk about the first album before we just dive into some of the songs, let's talk about "You Shook Me." The story behind that. I know that's something that we talked about at the temple a lot. So you know anything about that, Manny? The "You Shook Me" story.
No, no. I know the song, but not the. Is it the lawsuit controversy or something? Is that one of the songs? Or no?
Well, were they? Did they sue Muddy Waters?
well, you shook
Right, I'm
me.
sorry. Yeah, did Muddy Waters
Willie
sue them?
Dixon credit for "You Shook Me"
Oh yeah, yeah.
on
He wrote the
the album.
lyrics. Yeah.
He is given credit. Very simply, it's by Willie Dixon.
Oh, he is. Okay, so there was
Yeah.
no lawsuit. So basically, "You Shook Me" was recorded by Muddy Waters. Bass Willie Dixon played bass on it, and he wrote the lyrics. Now here's where the controversy comes in. Jeff Beck did it on Truth in 1968. And then Joe, you want to tell the story about what happened with that?
With Jeff Beck.
Yeah, what Jimmy Page did. What "You Shook Me."
Uh, well,
Didn't he steal the
that
arrangement?
song that Beck had done like less than 6 months before, I think. And Jimmy was kind of hurt by that because they were friends since they were 14 years old.
Yeah,
And Page just would dismiss it. He said it was no big deal. Everybody was doing "You Shook Me."
yeah, yeah.
Popular as "God Save the Queen" in England.
Right, right.
So he didn't understand why Beck was offended, and got a little bristly towards Page for that.
And they didn't talk for a while, right? And for
I
many,
don't I mean they
that's what I heard.
Beck wanted to be a band leader and he did his own thing and was fantastic at it.
Oh yeah, 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 definitely. It's amazing how all three Yardbirds guitar players all went on different routes, on their careers. Clapton and Cream, and then he had a great solo career in the '70s. Jeff Beck took more of that like fusion. Oh, he had the Jeff Beck group, which was a song group with Rod Stewart in the beginning, but then by the '70s, he was doing pretty much fusion, like or hard rock. Jeff Beck, Bogart, and a piece, and then Blow by Blow was a fusion album, and then Page was just a rocker the whole time.
Yeah.
And never like Zeppelin. Page never really went commercial. Where Clapton went commercial. I Shot the Sheriff and all that great stuff. And then Jeff Beck was the opposite. He went proggy and non-commercial.
Yeah. Well, how many decades did he go without a vocalist? It's hard, to be really successful without like that full band concept. He had no vocalist.
Oh, Jeff Beck.
Jeff Beck.
Oh yeah. Well, he
Wait,
did.
this is the Jeff Beck group.
no, early on, like Truth and the Jeff Beck group, Rod Stewart actually sang.
I was gonna say he was
Yeah,
vocalist for a little bit.
Well, yeah, for a while there. Yeah,
and
yeah.
that's a
That's
great album. There's
Yeah.
some great, Ronnie Lane. Oh, I'm sorry, Ron Wood. Ron Wood was on bass from the Stones, which is
yeah,
amazing in that album. They did the Shapes of Things.
yeah.
They covered that, and it was amazing.
That Beck is pretty funny about his relationship with Rod Stewart. He said, Rod and I have a strange relationship. He loves me, and I hate him.
Very English.
A few years ago, play
Well,
some music somewhere. Yeah.
well, now that you said that, it's almost like, not to get off the Zeppelin thing, but maybe you should tell that Cream story about Jack Bruce on his deathbed.
Oh, I still don't know if it's true.
But if it is, it's messed up.
It is messed up. Yeah, it just goes to show all those decades they could just never get it together. They're such great musicians. They just had personality conflicts.
Basically, yeah. Joe was saying on Manny, on Jack Bruce's deathbed, he called up Ginger Baker and he said, "I just wanted to say F you." On his deathbed.
I was gonna say that's so rock and roll.
Yeah, supposedly he said, "Ginger, this is Jack. F you. I'm dying. F you."
God.
Dude, that is like Cheech said, that is so English.
Yeah, it is. We're learning more about how the English think, from our Iron Maiden episode that we just did.
Yeah,
that'll be out shortly. Anyway, so first album, I gotta say, in my opinion, and I think you guys will agree, you get the first album. I wish I was alive in 1969. I wasn't, but if I heard this, I would have been blown away. When I was in 6th grade and I heard it, I was blown away. Good Times, Bad Times, the first track. I think it's the greatest opener of any album.
It's amazing. It's amazing. It literally sets the tone for the album.
Yeah, Bonham sets the tone. I like you hear those drums that first time when he comes.
And then there's those bass breaks in the middle.
Yeah.
And my favorite part is like right before the guitar solo. There's that stop, bow, and he goes right into the guitar solo. Yeah. It's genius. And then of course, Your Time Is Gonna Come. I love that organ solo.
Yeah,
it's like it's happy but creepy at the same time. It's that real deal organ solo. I remember when I was a kid, and Manny might not remember this. Joe, you might remember it, when we would go ice skating, and they always had an organ player playing a Hammond. I don't know if you remember that as a kid. Yeah,
I don't.
So
wait, you try to play a little bit of that song.
Yeah, if you could play
that organ solo, right?
Are you sure Zeppelin's gonna be cool with this? Because
I don't know.
Because
it's free.
Because Maiden was a little mad and they blocked us.
Well, no, it's not that they were mad. Is that they flagged us, but they said Maiden, and then it said Maiden's cool with you using their song.
Okay.
I'm not sure about Led Zeppelin.
Yeah, maybe do the organ just to play the
yeah. Let's try it out, because if they're not cool, which is a shame, then we'll be careful next time. I can probably block out the sound.
Yeah.
But so everyone can see, and I'm sure Joe agrees with the organ solo, but you're right, and it is creepy, but cool and weird.
Almost psychotic. Minor.
Yeah. So. And she's like you said, it is weird, especially like given that they were so bluesy and hard rock, and then then they hit that.
It almost reminded me of like, but when I was a kid, they'd have an organ player at the ice skating rink, and that's what it reminded me of. I remember there'd be this old lady playing.
Wait, that's a thing?
Oh yeah, you'd be ice skating, and there'd be an organist playing organ. Or if you'd go to a circus, I don't know if you guys remember going to the circus.
Okay,
There was
that I know. Yeah, they do the organ, that weird, creepy organ sound.
yeah. So that was something that was like the organ was huge in the 70s. It was 60s and 50s, you know. And me and Manny love we could talk for hours about toccata and fugue, and we love organs
Oh
and
gosh, don't get me
stuff,
started. And yeah, yeah,
you know. So that's what I love about Your Time Is Gonna Come. And then Dazed and Confused, Joe. Just thoughts on that. I mean, what are
yeah.
your thoughts on Dazed and Confused? Like,
Uh, it's pretty incredible. That's one tune that Jimmy brought from the Yardbirds. He was doing a variation on that.
right, with the bow, yeah.
Wait, Joe. Who is Jake Holmes?
Jake Holmes is the one that successfully sued Led Zeppelin for.
Okay, because it says on my notes that this song was inspired by Jake Holmes.
Yeah,
Okay.
but the
Now,
way on the album cover was it's by Jimmy Page, and you know, yeah.
and then there was another song, right, that
What?
a college student wrote on the first album we were talking about.
Oh, yeah, Babe, I'm Gonna Leave You was
Yeah,
which the Zepp guys had heard Joan Baez do,
yeah.
but the song was actually written by a California student, Ann Breeden, and it
Mm.
took decades, but I think she was able to settle with them and get the song credit because she
And
did write the song.
she had a publishing right already on that song.
That's a good question. I would think she did.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, Jimmy thought that it was a traditional song from like a century before, sort of thing, like a folk song.
yeah,
That's interesting. And this is before the internet age, right? So
yeah.
obviously he
Oh,
probably heard the song and said, "Wow, let me see if I can do what I can do with this song." That's really cool.
Yeah, I don't know how they got it wrong. How Jimmy didn't realize it. Yeah, he must have known from listening to the Joan Baez version because he played it for Plant the first time they met, and he said, "I'd like to do something like this on the first album." That he must have known that Joan Baez did not write the song, so he must have gotten bad information somewhere
Right.
that it was a traditional arrangement that went back farther and before there were like copyright laws.
yeah.
Yeah.
And my favorite part, in Days Confused is that bow section. That's some creepy shit, like I mean, nobody did that. Like what he was doing with a violin bow. Like I wonder what made him, and maybe Joe, you might know or heard stories. What made Jimmy Page pick up a violin bow and put it against a guitar as a pick?
Um, he was in a studio session that involved an orchestra, and you remember the TV show Man from Uncle? It was
No.
like it was an old show from the '60s. Well, I think the actor's name was David McCallum, and his father was in this orchestra and talked to Jimmy Page and said, you ought to try this. It's try the bow with the guitar, see what might make some interesting noise, right? So Jimmy tried it, and of course the rest is history. It became
That is
a
amazing.
centerpiece from the first shows on. Dazed and Confused, the extended version with the bow.
Did he ever use it on that show?
Man
On
from
the
Uncle.
Yeah.
No,
Oh, okay.
no, I
That
was just saying an actor on Man from Uncle, and
I thought he
but
played.
it was the actor's father.
Was
He
Jimmy
was
playing a session on that show? Was he
he was,
playing
he
the
was
music?
the show wasn't. No, it was there was an orchestra, and this actor's father was in it. I mean, that's how
Oh, I
story is that you may not know the musician, but you would know his son if you watched American television in the '60s.
okay.
Yeah, but he said, that Jimmy experiment with it with the bow. It could be fun.
Right.
So I guess that what makes it challenging is right the guitar is flat, whereas a violin is kind of like it's curved, right?
Yeah.
So it's hard to play. You're going to get
I
sounds
I
out.
experimented with it
Huh?
when I was in high school. I played the upright bass. I had that big bass. And there's two kinds of bows. I wonder what kind of bow Jimmy used. There's a German bow and a French bow. I think the German is thick. You got to have this rosin that you put on it. So I played the upright bass and I was learning how to bow. And then I was like, oh, let me try Jimmy Page. it doesn't quite work on the bass. I was like destroying my pickups with this German bow. I was like, I'm onto something. I'm gonna be like Jimmy Page, and we had my basement with my band Seance, and and I actually gave the bow to the guitar player LJ, who was a huge Jimmy Page freak. He played just like him, and I think he messed with it, and it sounded really good.
That's actually it's so funny. It's my favorite scene in Spinal Tap is the Nigel Tufnell doing like a Jimmy Page parody, but
With the violin,
he takes the actual violin and scratching it across the guitar, and then he's got like a mandolin at his feet, and he's taking his feet, and he's just you know make using his foot to hit the strings, and
that
it's
is
god
funny.
awful racket, and it was the funniest of his life.
And I think I was with you, Joe. I had a show, and there was a Led Zeppelin cover band that went on after. And I think, were you there when the guy played with the bow? Do you remember that?
Was it like at Fiddler's Green?
Yeah, one of those shows.
There was
And
one show where the band that came on after you guys was so loud and dissonant. I had to.
oh no, yeah. No, I remember that
I would
show.
have missed. I would.
No, this was a guy actually played. It was a Zeppelin cover band, and he played with a bow. I thought maybe you were at that show, and I never heard it live. Like somebody actually do Dazed Confused with a bow, and this guy was great. It was pretty creepy. It was
Yeah.
pretty.
Well, Jimmy he used to go really crazy on the bow as far as when he was hitting it, it would just splinter. There would
Yeah,
be like threads of it. So I don't know if
I wonder. No, it's a really cool concept. It's sort of similar how Jimi Hendrix would play the guitar with his
with
mouth,
the teeth. Yeah,
teeth. Now, is it practical? Not sure, but it is cool, especially seeing. I remember seeing those concert videos with Jimmy Page. Just like, and when I first encountered Led Zeppelin and saw them, I saw him doing that. I was like, that is strange, and
yeah.
hearing the sounds that would come out, like I've never
Oh,
seen that before.
especially the song of Same when he just like is improvising with it, and they get into the whole. I love that scene where it's him as a young kid developing into an old man, and then he's like that wizard on the mountain. I think it was like a Crowley's estate where they did that.
fantasy.
And there's some crazy stories. Not to get into Crowley, but there was a story where at Song Remains the Same when he would do those hits that dan dan dan, and then turn around and point it.
Yeah.
He was supposedly doing some kind of Crowley ritual
Oh,
with the bow. So he's a
Why
little
are
out
you
of his
saying that, Cheech? Yeah.
a little out of his mind, which I love about Jimmy Page.
well, you
So
might remember that when you move forward to like the '77 tour, he had that laser pyramid, and he would do the bow sequence, and the lasers would be around him in a pyramid shape, and then they would rotate.
oh yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
some great photos of that I've seen.
That's amazing.
Actually, when he was with the Firm on the first tour, he did it.
Oh wow.
I guess he had this laser. He had something to do with it. So
Yeah.
it
Well,
was
that's
incredible.
technology and stuff. We got better in the '80s with the laser. Imagine.
Yeah, it was really a neat effect.
Yep. And then the other thing, and we were just talking about this. This is, I think, the first heavy metal song, Communication Breakdown.
Yeah.
You know, I
It's so
think,
innovative for what it was.
I mean, Helter Skelter might be the first heavy metal song. I think because that's pretty heavy. It's not
I
more than
argue that is the first heavy metal song, but,
yeah.
but the Beatles didn't set out to create a heavy metal song.
Right.
But Zeppelin is the like they're the architects of what's going to happen, come down
Yeah.
later down the line.
And I think me and Joe were talking. There were some critics towards Led Zeppelin, other bands. And I brought this point up to Joe. I think you were saying that the Stones and who was the other band always kind of like dissed Led Zeppelin a
Well,
little bit.
they're like Keith Richards would kind of rag on him, saying that Zeppelin didn't swing, but that Jimmy was a good little guitarist.
Yeah.
And the thing is, I know that Keith Richards and Jimmy Page are friends, and they've recorded together, and they know each other pretty well. And George Harrison complained, when that Zeppelin had no ballads. He said that to Jimmy Page right to his face. He said the problem with your band is you don't have any ballads.
And they
So,
end up writing like the greatest ballad ever. Stay with it.
well,
Consider it,
actually,
you know.
Page's response was to write the Rain Song with Robert Plant for Houses of the Holy.
Oh,
And the
okay.
first two notes of the Rain Song are actually from Something by the Beatles and George
Wow.
Harrison. Yeah, you got to listen carefully. First two notes only. So yeah, Jimmy put that in the song.
It's kind of like, here you go, George. Here's your ballad.
Yeah, and Ginger Baker of Cream, I think, was very bitter towards John Bonham.
Yeah.
I think
And
because he was in some ways jealous of the financial success that Zeppelin had.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
And also, I think, John Bonham took Moby Dick from, he actually, kind of took the idea from Toad,
definitely
which,
inspired by it.
and that pissed off Ginger Baker as well, because Moby Dick became such a way more popular than Toad. I think if you're, the drummer, you're going to gravitate more to Moby Dick.
Mm-hmm.
And he played with his hands. That's insane. Like, no drummer played the drums with their hands. If you think about that, I mean, maybe
Yeah,
maybe Latin drummers might have done that. I know obviously the bongos, the
yeah.
congas, and stuff, but actual
That's famous, yeah. But rock and roll, nobody did that.
yeah, and it creates such a. I remember there was always a drum kit in my house growing up. With all the bands, and I'd say, "Let me play with my hands." It hurts. It hurts
Oh yeah,
trying to give yourself trigger finger. Do that for an hour.
yeah. Well,
Um,
Bonham could stretch that drum solo out to 20, 25 minutes.
Oh, and the crowd would still be there with their mouths open.
Yeah.
Well, they one of two things. Yeah, they would be either in awe or they say now's a good time to get a Diet Coke out at the concession stand and
Yeah, yeah,
use the restroom. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Well,
So yeah.
maybe for me, I would be, like I would never leave the drum solo, especially for our
Same.
drummer Neil. I would sit, like with the Rush, and I know Joe's like, I bet you they're gonna bring up a Rush reference. We're talking, and here's a good Rush reference.
No.
A
So,
part of a Rush concert is the drum solo. Like
I was gonna
when
say,
you
yeah,
when you knew why YYZ was coming, you were like, oh boy, we got 10 minutes. We're not going to the bathroom. We're gonna watch. We know what's gonna happen in the middle of it. So, what I was gonna say about communication breakdown, I think those guys were jealous or whatever. Not jealous.
yeah,
They didn't know what that was. That was heavy metal, and it's
yeah,
birthing. To use a mannerism,
yeah.
birthing, a Manny word. So that's
They're birthing. It's a new thing
it's a
that's, and
birth.
again, if you this album, it sounds so like when I was listening to it, and the year that it came out was 1970, right? 1969. Oh, so that's even
No, 68,
oh, so
1968.
that's even revolutionary. So the
Yeah.
fact that Cream, Keith Richards, George Harrison, they didn't understand like what
No.
this really was and what they were inventing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. It's because there was no. I mean, there was a heavy metal band out there, Blue Cheer. So our viewers out there, if you don't know who Blue Cheer is, check out Summertime Blues. That's the first heavy, in my opinion. That's 1967. That's the first heavy metal song. Um, and these guys looked the part too. They had long hair and they were playing like loud through Marshall stacks and everything. So and I think maybe Zeppelin might have. You said Jimmy Page was checking out a lot of bands, and Blue Cheer, I believe. I think they're American. I don't think they're English, but maybe he saw them. They were definitely on that circuit, and he might have took a little influence from them. I know. Our good friend Getty did. Um, but
One
uh,
communication breakdown. It's one of the few songs in the Zeppelin catalog that's credited to Jimmy Page, John Paul Jones, and John Bonham as the songwriters. And Robert Plant is not credited at all with any songs on the first album because he was still under contract with CBS Records. So,
so the band of Joy did put out an album then.
ooh,
well, Robert had been signed as a solo artist to CBS. That's
Oh,
how I remember reading about it.
who knew that? See,
So you
all
don't
this
see him as
learning.
songwriting credits on the first album.
wow.
So they were going to put Robert Plant out as a solo artist, like a Rod Stewart or somebody like that kind of thing.
Uh, I maybe.
That wow, I wonder what that would have been like.
Well,
And
he
then
signed a professional contract in 1966. Plant's been in the business a long, long time. Remember, he was going to give himself until he was 20 years old to
yeah,
make it as
right.
a band,
Right.
or he was going to give it up. And like just a few months before his 20th birthday, he met Jimmy Page and Peter Grant.
That's funny.
Yeah.
And just to share my exposure to Led Zeppelin, first song I've ever heard, and I remember this experience. I was in high school, and I told Cheech this. I discovered so I was listening to the music of the time. Had no idea that rock music existed except what my dad would say, and he talked about Led Zeppelin, but I didn't really care enough to. I thought that was old people's music. I don't even. He told me Led Zeppelin, oh cool. And then so I saw this list of so I discovered rock, went down the wormhole, discovered the greatest rock songs of all time. The list had Communication Breakdown. So and I remember this. I would go to I didn't have a computer, so I would go to the library and go on AOL.com or whatever it was back then, and listen to Communication Breakdown, and it was a game changer. I was like, wait,
Yeah,
what is this song? And mind you, I didn't listen to the rest of the tracks 'cause I wasn't ready to listen to whole albums like that yet.
yeah,
But I kept listening to that song, and I thought it was wow, this song is really good. So it just speaks to like the songwriting craft, and I'll be honest with you, it's a great single
yeah.
for what it was.
Oh, shoot. I just realized I'm at 20%. Why is my
Well, I was gonna say, Cheech, we have like so. I do apologize, Joe. I
I'm
have like
sorry.
we're gonna end in like 20 minutes. If that's
Okay.
okay.
I bought this cord and it unplugged. Now it's plugged in. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, man. What are you saying?
No, I'm saying like Communication Breakdown for any people out there trying to discover Led Zeppelin or where to start. Communication Breakdown as a song is a great place. It's short, to the point, and it has the architecture for heavy metal. So it might open people up to heavy
Oh,
metal later on. But
oh, definitely. It's unique. Joe, just quickly tell that Led Zeppelin story about Woodstock.
Oh, well, yeah, Led Zeppelin was invited to perform at Woodstock, and Peter Grant thought about it and declined the invitation because he knew that Zeppelin was getting big and that they were going to take off. And he didn't want Led Zeppelin to kind of be lost amongst all the other bands. So they stuck with their commitments. They would have had to have, I guess, postponed two or three concert dates, but they actually played when Woodstock was going on. They played in Asbury Park in New Jersey, and oddly enough, they had Joe Cocker as the support act. And as everyone knows, Joe Cocker accepted the invitation and went to Woodstock like the following day, and the rest is history. Because he's really prominent in the film. But
Yeah.
then after that, on Sunday, the same week as Woodstock, they performed locally at the Oakdale Music Theater in Wallingford, Connecticut.
Crazy, because I've been there so many times to see bands over the
Concert
years.
in the round, and it's amazing. I think they were just up the road because they could have. They were already in New York State. I mean, they were going to Connecticut. They were going into Jersey. Wouldn't have been so hard to go to New York State and go up to Woodstock. But
Yeah.
Peter wanted them to continue on with their own tour and not have, not to be diminished,
And
with this huge lineup of great acts.
it
wait,
makes
wait, Joe. Let me ask you a quick question. Like, if Led Zeppelin was at Woodstock, what would have happened? Like, what do you think?
They still would have taken off.
I was gonna say, there's no way.
Yeah.
Would,
Well, I was telling Cheech just 2 months before they did perform at the Bath Festival in late June, and I was telling Cheech about the great lineup for that festival. It was an outdoor festival, and you had Peter Green's Fleetwood Mac. And if you don't know Peter Green, YouTube "Oh Well," great song that the original Fleetwood Mac did. And then they had John Mayall was there 10 years after with Albert Lee. Of course, 10 years after performed at Woodstock. And then they had Nice, and I think Keith Emerson was with Nice at that.
yeah.
And then you had Chicken Shack, and in Chicken Shack was Christine McVie, who later went on to go with Fleetwood Mac.
Yeah.
That was quite a nice bill, 6 or 7 weeks before Woodstock
Yeah.
that Zeppelin played at.
But that was in England.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that might have been different. I think maybe America, he wanted to maybe just like be more mysterious in America. That's why he wouldn't have had them play Woodstock, keep that mystique about Led Zeppelin instead of throwing them out there with all these other bands
Yeah.
that
Good.
play.
Yeah.
Because Sabbath didn't play. What year was Woodstock? 69. So Sabbath didn't play Woodstock. They were out there, you know, at the time. Deep
Did they
Purple.
get an invitation to play Woodstock?
I don't know. Probably not.
Well, I will say, but Woodstock, for example, like, iconic performances like Jimi Hendrix, right?
Oh yeah, the greatest.
Right. So I can see what the manager was thinking of. Like,
Or Santana. I think my favorite performance is Santana at
I
Woodstock.
was gonna say Santana. Come on, and the Who were at
The
Woodstock.
Who? Yeah.
So
Oh yeah. And people forget that Mountain, the Great Mountain Band, was at Woodstock.
Yeah.
And Johnny Winter was at Woodstock. People forget that. With just a fun fact, the bass player was Tommy Shannon, who went on to play with Stevie Ray Vaughan.
Oh.
Fun bass fact. He actually played Woodstock. And then some people just never like took off after Woodstock, like Richie Havens. He never. I mean, in Woodstock, yeah, he was a legend. If you go up to Woodstock itself, but you never really heard much about him
yeah.
after Woodstock.
Another one, Cotton Joe and the Fish. They kind of didn't do anything.
Joe.
As
Kind
far
of
as I know, they had a cool performance, but
Yeah. Some bands. I mean, obviously, Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young took off. The Who took off. But a lot of bands, maybe didn't take off. Like Alvin Lee, 10 years after,
right.
brilliant guitar player. He was going home. He's just killing it. But they didn't take off like the other bands took off. Santana and Jimmy Page immortalized himself.
Well, I was gonna say, and sorry, I'm blanking out. Who's the Led Zeppelin manager? He's so famous. Blanking
Peter.
on his Peter Grant. Peter Grant. So I think Peter Grant made the smart choice because, again, Woodstock. Like when I always think of Woodstock, I think of Santana. They eclipsed a bunch of the bands, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And Jimi Hendrix is, he went on last, but
Oh
let
God.
me tell you, I think Peter Grant made a smart choice there, only because there's so much acts there, and if he was trying to break them into America, it's like I agree with you, Cheech. You want to keep up that mysteriousness.
Yeah. In England, it would make sense because you're jumping on a lot of English bands that
Yeah.
people you want them to know you. What was the story about the Monterey Pop Festival where the Who did not want to go on after Jimi Hendrix? You ever hear that story?
Well, yeah. I think they settled it with a coin toss.
Yeah.
Literally. Yeah.
Imagine that. Like as great as the Who was, like they're like scared of Jimi Hendrix, which of course who wouldn't be? But like
Didn't he burn a guitar on the Monterey Pop
yeah.
Festival?
Oh, he was the guy. Like, that was him at his peak. He had all the hip
Dude, I
gear.
would be scared if I was performing next to Hendrix. Yeah, no way.
Yeah,
No.
yeah. Oh, could you imagine trying to follow that? you know. So I know, Manny, you said you wanted to stop at in a little
Oh,
bit. So
so we have this is great because we covered Led Zeppelin one, which I like. We have 12 minutes. I think let's cut it at 1 hour.
why don't we ask Joe some questions and then
Yeah.
we'll go to Zeppelin too. So let me get my sheet. Do you have your question sheet, or I could
Well, so Joe, what do you think is like the greatest song on Led Zeppelin one, or your favorite? Like what is your favorite and why?
Oh, probably Dazed and Confused.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Why?
Believe it or not, I like the bass on it.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I already knew that, he had the violin bow and all that. It was really cool. Just a cool song. I also liked More Times.
I was gonna say that's a great song.
Yeah, that is a great song.
It's the album. Yeah.
And it was funny you put a picture of you sent us in the group text Royal Albert Hall.
Oh, yeah.
And that's my favorite version of How Many More Times from that show. That's amazing. That's your favorite. I'm surprised. I'm surprised. I would have thought something different. But what was? I think you said this already, but I was going to ask you, what was your first Led Zeppelin album you bought? And you said it was Led Zeppelin 4?
Yeah.
Okay. And what's your favorite track on Led Zeppelin 4?
Ooh, Black Dog.
Black Dog.
No question. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so what is your favorite Led Zeppelin album?
Physical Graffiti.
Wow.
Yeah.
And why?
Well, it's a double album. So you get twice the Zeppelin. But
Makes sense.
it's like so many different types of songs. And of course, the band themselves think that Kashmir was really the height
Yeah,
of,
yeah.
of their musicianship. They thought, and if you ask Robert Plant, he really is proudest of Kashmir, more so than Stairway.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And the production is weird on that album because I think some of it was left over from Houses of the Holy because they recorded it in different studios.
Some of it was left over from Led Zeppelin 4.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah, yeah. Well, I meant to say Houses of the Holy. The song was supposed to be on
Oh, yes.
the Holy. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, so Led Zeppelin. So some of that stuff was going to be on Led Zeppelin 4. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
Do you know what song?
I think one of them might have been
Which one? I'm sorry.
Down by the Seaside.
Oh yeah, that's a great song.
Wait, and Joe, what's your opinion on Stairway of Heaven? Is it overrated or the greatest song of all time?
Well, there's kind of a reason why the guitar shops all say, no Stairway to Heaven playing, here when you look at a guitar and start strumming it.
Right.
Oh, I'll tell you what, with Stairway to Heaven, if you take months off and don't hear it, and then you put it on, you're listening to it fresh, it's truly amazing.
I was gonna say, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's one of the greatest guitar solos ever. It's just so iconic, And the flute part on the keyboard,
it's stunning.
Yeah, I remember when we were in high school, we made this girl learn the flute part to Stairway to Heaven when we were playing it. We used to play it in high school. Do you have any more another question for Joe?
Yeah, so Led Zeppelin 1. So just given the kind of first, Joe, what do you think of the album cover of Led Zeppelin 1? Was that when you discovered Led Zeppelin, were you like, man, this is so cool?
I didn't know what to make of it, right? So
I know, because there's a little bit of history behind it.
Well, that's the Hindenburg.
Yeah.
I don't know the story really well, but they met, I guess, the Baroness von Zeppelin. There was a man named Zeppelin who actually, was the architect for these blimps, and she was very upset when she saw the album cover. I think she said something like, a bunch of shrieking monkeys are not going to, soil a historic family name type of thing.
Oh wow!
Yeah, she was going to how they worked it out. Apparently, she was concerned about the name Led Zeppelin, and for some reason, I don't know how they did it. Maybe they were performing in Germany. Jimmy Page met with this woman, and he was very charming, and he kind of won her over. And then she saw the album cover, and she blew up. She just was very upset by it.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's funny. And who was the member of the Who that said they're going to go down like
well, that's been a debate for decades. Was it
Entwistle or Moon?
Yeah. I think Moon wins out.
That one?
Moon, but I don't know why John Entwistle would for decades say, he was the one that came up with the Led Zeppelin.
Well, him and Moon always
Moon but they weren't going to call themselves the Lead Balloon.
Funny. Okay, and who's your favorite member of Led Zeppelin?
Well, I've been fortunate enough to have seen Robert Plant a dozen times as a solo artist. I got to go with Plant. He's singing
more than Page. Wow. As a favorite.
Jimmy's the coolest rock star.
Yeah.
But Keith Richards is still the all-time greatest rock star, I think. But Jimmy,
that's definitely, he's up there.
Yeah. But the favorite is Robert Plant, because he was always the most approachable. He was the one that you know, didn't take himself too seriously. I mean, he was the only one in the band that could go into a McDonald's and, the kids would all go, "Hey, is that Robert Plant?" And he would like do the classic rock pose, with the hands on the hips
Yeah,
and strut out his chest. He would have fun with it.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
That's amazing.
Whereas the other guys, like Jimmy would stay in the hotel.
yeah.
He would be out there.
So is Jimmy? Wait. So just to bring up another Rush reference, is Jimmy Page? I know. But is Jimmy Page like Neil Peart in a way? In his or is he shy or is he doesn't care about that?
Well, now Jimmy is like considered to be a statesman. What would you call it? Like an ambassador uh,
Yeah.
of rock and roll. He's telling all the stories, and he has a very good relationship now with the media. But back in the '70s, when they were getting the bad reviews, Jimmy didn't trust the media, so he wouldn't do very many interviews at all.
Yeah.
He would be more likely to do an interview with a college newspaper than he would with Rolling Stone, because Rolling Stone obliterated them, tore them apart.
Interesting.
That's why I hate Rolling Stone magazine, man.
Eh,
Like
No, and one more Rush reference. Rolling Stones ripped into Rush.
they ripped 2112 apart. Like Rolling Stone
Why?
did so good music. I mean, and then they'll put some crappy band on there that's the greatest band of all time. That's why I never really was fond of that.
Well,
Um,
what's funny about Rolling Stone is that every once in a while, if their circulation dipped, they would put Zeppelin on the cover, and their circulation would go up.
that's funny.
They
And
would
and
hire
yeah,
magazine Zeppelin on the cover.
yeah.
Yeah.
And another Rush reference. Rush actually did make the cover of Rolling Stone right before Neil passed, which is
Oh,
like the last tour. So here is an interesting question that I have for Joe. Me and Manny were talking about this, and I mean, I didn't think you said you never heard of this. What do you think of Coverdale Page?
oh, I got the album. They
What's your
rock.
what's your opinion on it?
Coverdale. Anybody that says that Jimmy had lost it, no, he was rocking out on that. You know,
Yeah,
but of course there was a big backlash because David Coverdale has an uncanny resemblance to a Robert Plant.
and his vocals.
Video of them. They only did one tour, and it was of Japan. So there's very little out there. But my God, you look quick and you go, "Is that Robert Plant on there?" You know.
Yeah,
But I thought it was a good album.
yeah. I'm not a big fan of it. I was like,
And
why?
that's 1993, right, guys?
Yeah, I was like, why doesn't he just call it Robert Plant? And he does end up calling Robert Plant a year later. But like, why? Maybe Plant was busy or Plant didn't want to do it. What do you think is the reason why he chose David Coverdale over the man?
It's because Plant turned him down.
Oh, Plant turned him down.
Yeah.
Oh, so it was almost like, okay, well then I'm gonna.
He actually put out an album called Fate of Nations, solo album, and I really enjoyed it. But for some reason, uh, I guess the fans did not buy a lot of the copies of the album, and so that's why when I saw the Plant this past summer in Hershey Park in Pennsylvania, he was so funny. He goes, the last time I was here, I opened for the fucking Who. He became an opening act at that point, and I guess he was also touring with Lenny Kravitz. But yeah, Plant's album sales were going down, and it was like he got back together with Jimmy.
Right. And now, just to reference, this is right in the peak of grunge too.
Yeah,
So,
well, the Unleaded reunion, Page and Plant.
well, yeah, I was gonna bring that up next. Like, what did you think of No Quarter? This and walking into Clarksdale.
Well, No
This was,
Quarter, I thought was great. I thought it was very, very well done. And of course, John Paul Jones was not invited to participate.
yeah. Why do
You
you
know,
think? Why do you think they never called on Jonesy? Like, why do you think they just were like they just kind of messed up? I think.
when in doubt, I always say money. It could have been a money issue. It could have been a personality issue. John Paul Jones has that dry English humor, and maybe
Yeah.
it's funny sometimes, but maybe other times they thought, hey, is this guy trying to tell us what to do? you know.
Yeah.
So and John Paul Jones was he was the least social of the band. That's why he came out of Led Zeppelin unscathed. You know, uh,
Yeah.
yeah, he was on his own. He thought himself pretty much as like an employee. You know, not
When he,
he did.
yeah.
You know, we're not best friends. It's a working arrangement. You know,
Well, that was his mentality because he was like we talked about this earlier, and if you want to say the band that John, because we were trying to research, what was John Paul Jones's band, his father's band or something he was in?
um, Tony Meehan and I can't remember the other guy's name.
Because it seems like John Paul Jones never played in a band full time. He always was a hired gun. He was a session
Yeah.
guy.
Well, it turns out that he was a member of a band for about 2 years before going into the studio, and he turned professional when he was only 17.
Yeah, I mean, oh,
You know,
that's
but
still young. That's to be a pro musician at 17 is and so good. That's
yeah,
amazing.
it might be
Um,
for No Quarter they had the Egyptian orchestra,
yes, my sister and
but
Rob saw that show.
John Paul Jones was quoted as saying that apparently they hired 40 people to take my place. That's the kind of humor he had,
Yeah,
you know.
there's a great video of John Paul Jones at the MTV Music Awards with playing bass for Lenny Kravitz.
Yes,
I don't know if you ever saw that.
I've seen it, and as always, the bass is always mixed very low. It's hard to hear it on the TV.
I watch it on YouTube. I guess you can hear the bass a little bit more on YouTube, and he's killing it. Unlike the reunion, where I was a little disappointed in his bass sound because I think he got a little too modern with his equipment, and
Maybe,
they played Ramble On, and I felt like the bass got lost on Ramble On.
yeah.
On but Manny, any other questions for Joe?
I guess for the next episode. Well,
Okay,
I think this is a good place to end. And once again, Joe, thank you so much. This is not going to be the last episode. I think this is going to be an ongoing series.
Oh,
we got Zeppelin 2 and 3. Yep.
3, 4. If I hit them all,
Definitely. Feel like the rush.
it'll be the Led Zeppelin episodes. So this is not going to be the last one. And I think, yeah, thank you, Joe, once again for
Thanks, Joe.
sharing
We
your
miss
knowledge.
you very much, man. We miss you.
in closing, every musician should listen to Led Zeppelin. Because if you think about it, think of Robert Plant. He's had 40 years plus 12. He had the 12 with Zeppelin. He had 40 years as a solo artist. He's still out there. If you want to have a successful career, you better watch that guy. And
Yeah.
John Paul Jones, with all the work he's done, he's more like an arranger and all that stuff. But he's followed his passion, you know.
Yeah.
And I don't think we've heard the last from Jimmy.
What's it? Them Crooked Vultures, right?
Yeah, I'm hoping they get together. There's always a rumor that then Crooked Vultures will do one more tour, but
that was always cool to see him come out with a bunch of young guys.
and but John Paul Jones is now 80 years old.
Is he?
Yeah,
And Jimmy too, right?
yeah. I think they were both born in January 1944.
Jesus. Why do you think like Jimmy Page is? When was the last time Jimmy played? Was it the reunion or did he play?
Well, I'll tell you what. If you haven't seen this, he inducted Link Ray,
Oh, that's right. I did
Rock
see
and
that.
Hall of Fame, and he did. Oh snap! What's the famous song? The Rumble,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And he used the double neck guitar. It was the best use of the double neck guitar I've ever heard.
Yeah. He did play recently.
He
Yeah.
played so well.
I loved when he did the Ronnie Lane Arms concert. When he took a break and he came back and he did the Stairway to Heaven.
Yeah, the instrumental version.
Yeah, that was amazing. It's crazy.
Yeah, it was after that he did some shows with Paul Rogers, and then they got together and formed the Firm. I think.
I thought the Firm was going to be a bigger group. Because the first album. Manny, are you familiar with the Firm?
I've heard of them.
Radioactive. Oh my God! And what's the other one? Oh God, the ballad. Joe, help me. I'm losing my.
It's called Midnight Moonlight.
No, the other one. Satisfaction Guaranteed.
Oh yeah,
That's oh my God, it's beautiful. And then the second album, All the King's Horses, I think, it's a dud.
yeah. I got to see both tours that they did of America. Yeah, I saw them twice.
Wow.
They're The first show was magic. The second show, they had some technical difficulties early on, but
Yeah.
it was still good. It's still
Yeah.
good. But I don't think they thought that was going to be a long project. I think it was 2 albums and done. I think that was the plan.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting drummer of choice, Chris Slade from Uriah Heep. He really and he later on joined AC/DC
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
replacement Rod. Good, good drummer, And me and Manny talked about it at the Temple. Like Robert Plant had some great solo albums during that time as well.
Really. Yeah.
Early MTV. I remember seeing a lot of Robert Plant videos.
Yep.
There was that one video where he's walking away and he starts taking off his shirt or something like that.
Oh.
I remember that as a kid going, what the fuck is this guy?
Yeah, that was burning down one side or something. Yeah, yeah.
A big log maybe, or I don't remember, but
Right. He the only solo album where he almost lost his audience was Shaken and Stirred, which it was just like it was too out there. I think he was trying to be very, very modern, and he almost lost his audience. I still bought it.
what's the album with the young Jason Bonham on drums? Outrider?
Outrider. Yes.
That's anybody that wants to hear a great rock album after The Firm. I mean, Outrider, and that was a band, so it's not like solo.
Yeah,
phenomenal band,
put out. Yeah.
But a very young Jason Bonham.
Oh yeah.
17 years old or something like that.
Very young.
But all right, Joe. Thank you so much.
This was
great
fun.
To see you. It was a lot of fun. Miss you. Miss our talks in the morning about music.
Yeah.
But Led Zeppelin, one of the greatest bands in the world, and Joe is the Led Zeppelin historian. So many great fun facts I had no idea about. It's crazy. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Yeah.
Thanks for being on the Cheech and Manny show, and we're going to be doing more Led Zeppelin with you. And thanks again, Joe.
Thank you for having me.
Anytime, man.
All right.
All right.